Okay, so picture this.
Mm.
You're a historian.
Yeah.
You stumble upon a perfectly preserved 500-year-old Incan girl
Wow.
frozen in time,
Okay.
and get this,
Yeah.
traces of coca leaves in her system.
Really?
That's exactly what happened to Dan Snow.
Ah,
And that discovery is kind of what sparked our deep dive today.
interesting.
We're going beyond the typical cocaine narratives
Okay.
to uncover its surprising journey
Ah, I like it.
from a sacred Andean plant
Right.
to a Victorian wonder drug
Fascinating.
and everything in between.
I'm intrigued.
It's a story
Yeah.
that spans centuries and continents,
Wow.
from ancient rituals in the Andes to like the
Yeah.
bustling streets of Victorian London.
I see.
And what's fascinating is how this one plant,
Mm-hmm.
the coca leaf,
Right.
has been woven into human history
Yeah.
in ways you might not expect.
Interesting.
We're talking 8,000 years
Wow.
of cultural significance,
Okay.
long before Europeans even knew it existed.
That's incredible.
The coca leaf.
Yeah.
It was deeply embedded in the Incan world.
Absolutely.
They used it
Yeah.
like in religious ceremonies, offered it to their gods,
Mm-hmm.
even relied on it
Really?
to
Yeah.
fuel their laborers.
It was essential to
It
them.
really makes you
Oh,
wonder,
no.
what was it about this plant
Right.
that held such power
Yeah.
for the Inca people?
Well, they personified the coca leaf spirit
Oh, right.
as Mama Coca,
Huh.
a divine figure associated with health and happiness.
Interesting.
Some scholars even think
Yeah.
the Incas' desire for more coca-growing land
Mhm.
might have actually spurred their expansion
Wow.
across the Andes.
So it wasn't just a plant.
Right.
It was
Yeah.
it was a symbol of well-being, a
Absolutely.
source of spiritual connection,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe even a driving force
Exactly.
behind an empire.
Uh-huh.
Now, you'd think
Yeah.
when the Europeans arrived
Yeah.
and saw this wonder plant, they would have braced it, right?
You'd think so.
Especially with their history of
Yeah.
embracing,
Yeah,
other New World discoveries
Mhm.
like coffee and tobacco.
for sure.
But coca's journey to Europe,
Well,
it was a lot more complicated.
it was.
What were some of the roadblocks?
Well, for starters,
Yeah.
coca leaves are delicate.
Okay.
They lose their potency quickly,
Huh.
making transportation,
A real challenge.
a challenge.
And plus, the Spanish conquistadors,
Yeah.
initially they saw coca used
Yeah.
as
Yeah.
some kind of pagan ritual
Right.
and tried to suppress it.
Interesting.
They even associated it with
Really?
witchcraft.
Huh.
Wow.
Yeah.
So cultural clashes
Uh-huh.
and religious biases
Definitely.
played a role,
Absolutely.
but eventually
Mhm.
practicality won out, right?
Exactly.
The Spanish saw how
Huh.
coca enabled Incan laborers
Yeah.
to work harder
Right.
for longer periods
Longer?
with less food.
Less food.
It was an economic advantage
Right.
they couldn't ignore.
Absolutely.
So they essentially adopted
Yeah.
the Incan system of using coca
Mm-hmm.
to boost productivity.
That's right.
It's fascinating how something demonized
Yeah.
can become essential
Mhm.
when it suits a purpose.
Exactly.
But even with the Spanish on board,
Okay.
coca remained
Yes.
largely unknown
Mm-hmm.
in Europe
Right.
until the 19th century
The 19th century.
and its introduction
Yeah.
to a wider audience.
A wider audience.
It's partly thanks to
Yeah.
William Miller,
William Miller.
a British soldier
Uh-huh.
who served with
Well,
both Wellington and Bolivar.
interesting.
He wrote these captivating accounts
Really?
of coca use in Bolivia,
Huh.
which piqued European curiosity.
I see.
It was like a glimpse
Yeah.
into an exotic,
An exotic.
a whole new world.
So a soldier's tales
Right.
planted the seeds.
Planted the seeds for coca's entry
Coca's entry
into the European consciousness.
into the European consciousness.
That was another colorful character,
Okay.
Edward Payson Weston,
Edward Payson Weston.
who really brought coca into the limelight.
Interesting.
This is in the mid-19th century, right, Weston?
Yeah.
He was a long-distance walking champion.
A walking champion.
He turned competitive walking
Really?
into a spectator sport.
Wow.
Imagine thousands of people
Wow.
gathering to watch people walk
Just walking.
for miles.
That's amazing.
It sounds bizarre,
It does.
but I guess the Victorians had their own brand of entertainment.
They did.
Indeed.
Yeah.
But here's where it gets interesting.
Okay.
Weston swore by coca leaves,
Really?
claiming they boosted his stamina
Huh.
and helped him endure
Yeah.
those grueling walks.
Farling walks.
This sparked a trend.
Okay.
And soon,
Yeah.
coca chewing became the rage
Word.
among athletes, cyclists, even racehorse owners.
Racehorse owners.
So coca was suddenly trendy,
Trendy.
associated with athletic prowess
Right.
and pushing human limits.
Pushing limits.
Precisely.
Exactly.
It was marketed
Yeah.
as a performance
Of a
enhancer,
performance enhancer.
almost like an early version
Right.
of today's sports drinks.
Interesting.
This fueled a boom
Okay.
in coca importation
Coca importation.
to meet the growing demand.
To meet the demand.
So we see coca,
Mm-hmm.
the plant,
And making its mark.
its mark.
Hmm?
But what about cocaine? The refined substance?
It's a refined substance.
When did that enter the picture?
Cocaine itself was first isolated in the 1860s.
The 1860s.
But it took a while
Yeah.
for people to figure out what to do with it.
Okay.
It was much stronger
The rocker.
than the coca leaf,
Right.
and its effects were,
Yeah.
shall we say,
Yeah.
less predictable.
So a potent new substance
Yeah.
with no clear purpose sounds like a recipe
It does.
for both innovation
Yeah.
and
But it
trouble.
found trouble.
And it did cause some trouble,
It did.
especially for
That's-
Sigmund Freud,
Sigmund Freud.
who experimented with cocaine
Oh, really?
early in his career.
Interesting.
He even mistakenly thought
He did.
it could cure morphine addiction.
Yeah, wow.
Not exactly his finest
Those exactly.
medical moment.
Medical moment.
But wasn't there a pivotal discovery
There was.
that changed everything?
Yes, in 1884,
1984.
Karl Kohler,
Carl Kohler.
a Viennese physician
Okay.
and a friend of Freud,
Interesting.
discovered cocaine's
Yeah.
remarkable anesthetic properties,
Anesthetic property.
especially for eye surgery. Before Kohler's discovery,
Okay.
general anesthetics like chloroform and ether,
Okay.
they were the go-to, but they had limitations.
God bless.
Cocaine applied topically
Uh-huh.
could numb specific areas,
Interesting.
making procedures like eye surgery
Yeah.
much safer.
It must have felt revolutionary
Absolutely.
at the time.
It was.
that they had finally conquered pain.
Exactly.
And remember, this was the dawn
Yeah.
of the 20th century,
Right.
an era
Yeah.
obsessed with technological advancement,
Mm-hmm.
cocaine with its ability to
Right.
make surgery painless.
Painless.
It fit perfectly
It did.
into that narrative of progress.
Absolutely.
So a substance's perception
Yeah.
is tied
The purple.
to the cultural context of its time.
Absolutely.
And this fascination,
Yeah.
it wasn't limited
It wasn't.
to the medical field.
No.
Cocaine quickly found its way into all sorts
All sorts.
of everyday products.
It did.
What kind of products?
Well, think
Yeah.
cold remedies,
Okay.
hay fever cures,
Uh,
even seasickness tablets.
really?
If it promised relief from any kind of ailment,
Okay.
chances are
Yeah.
it contained cocaine.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling to
Uh-huh.
think that something now considered so dangerous
Right.
was once so commonplace.
It's crazy to think about.
It might seem crazy to us now,
Yeah.
but remember,
Yeah.
this was before
Right.
the addictive nature of cocaine
Yeah.
was fully understood.
Fully understood.
And this is where things get even more complicated.
Complicated.
Because as cocaine
Yeah.
was being hailed as a medical marvel,
Uh-huh.
it was also becoming increasingly
Mhm.
popular
Yeah.
for recreational use.
Recreationally used.
A sort of
Yeah.
dual identity for
Yeah.
cocaine.
Full identity.
So how did this shift from medicine to recreation
Yeah.
happen?
Part of it can be traced back
Okay.
to those cocaine-laced snuffs
Uh-huh.
marketed as cold remedies.
Cold remedies.
People started realizing
Yeah.
that these snuffs
Yeah.
had effects
Okay.
that went way beyond
Okay.
clearing a stuffy nose.
So a seemingly innocent cold remedy inadvertently became a gateway
It did.
to a more,
Yeah.
shall we say,
Yeah.
recreational cocaine experience.
A recreational experience.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And as cocaine use spread
Yeah.
beyond
Yeah.
the affluent white populations
Mhm.
that initially embraced it,
Right.
societal anxieties
Yeah.
started to surface.
They did.
It seems like there's
Yeah.
a recurring pattern here.
There is.
A substance enjoyed by the elite
Mm-hmm.
is viewed differently
Differently.
when it becomes accessible
Mm.
to other social groups.
Other social groups.
Almost a fear
Yeah.
of losing control, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely.
And this hypocrisy
Uh-huh.
is a constant theme
And that is
in the history of drug use
drug use
and regulation.
and regulation.
Cocaine became a scapegoat,
Right.
a symbol
Yeah.
of social anxieties,
Social anxiety.
about changing demographics
Uh-huh.
and moral decay.
Moral,
This
yeah.
fear-mongering was amplified by the media,
By the media.
often fueled
Yeah.
by racial and class prejudices.
Absolutely.
So we see this shift
Mm-hmm.
from celebration to demonization
Right.
happening quite rapidly.
It did.
Was World War I a turning point?
Definitely.
In 1916,
1916,
the Defense of the Realm Act,
Defense of the Realm Act.
initially intended
Yeah.
to bolster national security
Uh-huh.
during wartime,
During wartime.
was amended
Okay.
to restrict cocaine access.
Restrict cocaine access.
This was a pivotal moment,
It was.
laying the groundwork
Right.
for stricter drug laws
The stricter drug laws.
in the UK
In the UK,
and setting the stage
setting the stage.
for what would eventually become
Right.
the global war on
That's
drugs.
the war on drugs.
So a wartime measure
Yeah.
born out of fear
Uh-huh.
and a desire for control
Right.
had a long-lasting impact
It did.
on how we view
Yeah.
and regulate drugs.
Absolutely.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Cocaine
Yeah.
was both embraced for its potential
Right.
and feared
Mm-hmm.
for its perceived dangers.
That duality
Yeah.
is at the heart
Okay.
of the cocaine story.
Great cocaine story.
It's also reflected in the character of Sherlock Holmes.
The cocaine-using detective.
Right.
What do you think Conan Doyle was trying to convey
Yeah.
through that aspect
That's fascinating.
of Holmes' character?
It is.
Holmes, he's portrayed as this brilliant,
Brilliant,
rational mind,
Uh-huh.
a master of logic
Logic.
and deduction.
Deduction.
But he's also deeply flawed,
Deeply flawed.
prone to bouts
Yeah.
of melancholy
Melancholy.
and isolation.
Isolation.
Cocaine for him
Yeah.
was a tool
Yeah.
to sharpen his mind,
Sharpen his mind.
push his abilities
Uh-huh.
beyond ordinary limits.
Beyond ordinary limits.
So it represented both his brilliance
Yes.
and his potential for self-destruction.
self-destruction.
Something about a Faustian bargain.
Exactly.
And this reflects
Yeah.
the broader societal fascination
Mm-hmm.
with cocaine.
With cocaine.
Okay.
Absolutely.
It was seen
Yeah.
as a substance that could unlock human potential,
Unlock human potential.
for better or worse,
For better or worse.
like a key to a hidden door,
Exactly.
leading to unknown possibilities.
Unknown possibility.
But it's clear
Yeah.
that the darker side
The darker side
of cocaine
of cocaine.
started to overshadow its perceived benefits,
Right.
especially
Yeah.
as its recreational use grew.
Recreational use grew.
And this is where we see the media
Yeah.
playing a more prominent role,
A more prominent role.
shaping public perception.
Shifting public perception.
You have newspapers
Uh-huh.
and magazines
Yeah.
both praising
Right.
the wonders
Yeah.
of cocaine-laced remedy,
Cocaine-laced remedies.
while also reporting on the increasing cases
Increasing cases
of addiction
addiction
and negative consequence.
and negative consequences.
A mixed message.
It was.
That must have created a lot of confusion
Yeah.
and anxiety for the public.
A lot of confusion and anxiety.
Indeed,
Yeah.
society
Yeah.
was grappling
Oh,
with
yeah.
this potent new substance,
This new substance.
trying to define its place
Right.
and understand its limits.
And understand its limit.
Was there a clear turning point
Yeah.
where the narrative shifted
Yeah.
decisively against cocaine?
It wasn't a single event.
Okay.
It was a gradual shift.
Oh.
Fueled by
Yeah.
a confluence of factors.
Confluence of factors.
There were the
Right.
alarming reports,
Alarming reports
addiction,
and overdoses,
particularly among marginalized communities,
marginalized community.
which were then used
Yeah.
to justify racially charged narratives.
Racially charged narratives
Was about the dangers of cocaine.
about the dangers of cocaine.
This coupled with the wartime anxiety
Wartime anxieties
about maintaining national strength
and control
and control.
created a perfect storm
A perfect storm
for prohibition.
for prohibition.
So what began
Yeah.
as fascination
Fascination.
and even celebration
Yes, celebration.
ended in fear,
Yeah.
demonization,
Demonization.
and ultimately
Yeah.
criminalization.
And criminalization.
It's a cautionary tale
It is.
about how societal anxieties
Right.
and prejudices
Prejudice.
can shape our approach
Absolutely.
to substances,
Substances.
especially when those anxieties
anxieties.
are projected onto
Yeah.
specific communities.
Specific community.
It's a reminder
It is.
that drug policy
Yeah.
isn't just about
Right.
the substance
It's
itself,
the substance itself.
but about the social, cultural
cultural and economic
force
forces.
that shape its use
Right.
and perception.
And perception. And what's remarkable is that despite cocaine being effectively prohibited in 1916, it didn't just disappear. The 1920s, for example,
Yeah.
saw a thriving drug scene,
Really?
almost as if the ban
Yeah.
fueled a counter movement.
It makes you think
Yeah.
about the effectiveness
Yeah.
of prohibition as a strategy.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
trying to dam a river.
Okay.
You might redirect the flow temporarily,
Yeah.
but the water will
Right.
always find a way through.
Exactly.
The ban didn't vanish
Yeah.
just because a
Yeah.
law was passed.
Exactly.
And arguably, making it illegal
right.
only increased its allure
Yeah.
and pushed it further underground.
Further underground.
Plus, you have to consider
Right.
the impact of technology
Oh, yeah.
in the 20th century.
The 20th century.
It became easier to produce and distribute
Easier to produce and distribute.
cocaine
Cocaine.
on a massive scale.
Absolutely. That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
The authorities at the time underestimated the ingenuity
Yeah.
of those involved
Yeah.
in the illicit drug trade.
Illicit drug trade.
They were focused on shutting down
Yeah.
large factories.
Fine.
Large factories.
On plantations.
On plantations.
But they failed to anticipate
Yeah.
the rise of smaller, more mobile operations.
More mobile operations.
So in a way,
Right.
prohibition inadvertently
Yeah.
created
Yeah.
the conditions
The conditions.
for a more sophisticated
Uh-huh.
and difficult to control black market.
Exactly.
It's a classic example
It is.
of unintended consequences.
Unintended consequences.
And it's something we see repeated
It's too.
throughout history
Yeah.
with various prohibition efforts.
Prohibition effort.
That makes you wonder
Yeah.
if there might be more effective ways
Right.
to address drug use
To address drug use
and minimize the harms
and minimize the harms.
associated with it.
There are certainly alternative approaches
Okay.
worth considering.
Like what?
Harm reduction strategy.
A harm reduction strategy.
For example,
Yeah.
focus on mitigating
Yeah.
the negative
That's
consequences of drug use
Okay.
rather than trying to eliminate it entirely.
So can you give us some
So-
specific examples
Yeah.
of what those strategies?
Strategies.
Certainly.
Mhm.
Things like
Yeah.
needle exchange programs,
Needle exchange programs.
safe consumption sites,
Okay.
and readily available
Mm-hmm.
access to treatment.
Mhm.
Access to treatment.
And support
But
services.
support services.
So it's about acknowledging
It is.
that people are going to use drugs,
People are going to use drugs
regardless of their legal status,
regardless of their legal status,
and focusing on
minimizing the risks
minimizing the risks
involved.
Right.
It's a more pragmatic
Yeah.
and compassionate
A
approach
compassionate approach.
that prioritizes
Uh-huh.
public health
Public health
and individual well-being.
and individual well-being.
It feels like there's a lot
There is
we can learn
a lot to learn
from the history of cocaine
and the unintended consequences
the unintended consequences
of the prohibition.
of prohibition.
It highlights
It does.
that drug policy isn't solely about the
Right.
substance itself,
The substance itself.
but about this
Ah.
complex interplay.
This complex interplay.
Yeah, it's social,
and, like,
social,
Cultural
and economic factors
and economic factors
that influence its use.
that influence its use.
An impact.
It's a reminder
It is
to look beyond the headlines
to look beyond the headlines.
and the often simplistic narratives
The simplistic narrative
surrounding drugs.
surrounding drugs. It's about understanding
Okay.
the complexities of human behavior,
Yeah.
the allure of pleasure,
The allure of pleasure.
and the challenges of
Yeah.
balancing
Yeah.
individual freedoms
Or collective well-being.
with collective well-being.
Okay.
And perhaps most importantly,
Yeah.
it's about recognizing
Amazing.
that our attitudes towards drugs
Uh-huh.
are often shaped by
Yeah.
our own prejudices,
And anxieties about
and anxieties,
those who use them.
those who use them.
It feels like the story of cocaine is
Yeah.
ultimately a reflection
A reflection.
of ourselves.
Ourselves.
Our fears, our desires,
Our desires.
and our capacity for
Yeah.
both innovation and destruction.
Innovation and destruction. Well said.
It's a story
Yeah.
that continues to unfold
It does.
with new
Major
chapters
now.
being written all the time.
All the time. The rise of synthetic drugs, debates surrounding legalization, this
Legalization.
ongoing opioid crisis.
The opioid crisis.
These are all part of
Yeah.
the evolving narrative
involving narrative
of cocaine.
of cocaine.
And its enduring impact on society.
On society. It's a powerful reminder.
A powerful reminder.
That we can't simply erase the past.
We can't erase the past.
Or ignore.
Right.
The lessons it offers.
The lessons it offers.
We need to engage with it.
Absolutely.
Critically.
Critically.
Honestly.
Yeah.
And with a willingness.
Yeah.
To learn from our mistakes.
To learn from our mistakes. And perhaps through a deeper
understanding.
The complex journey.
The complex journey of cocaine.
We can find more informed.
A more informed.
And compassionate way forward.
A compassionate way forward.
In addressing the challenge.
In addressing the challenges.
Of drug use.
Of drug use.
In our own time.
In our own time.
As a thought-provoking note to end on. It is.
We hope this deep dive
has
given you a new perspective.
A new perspective.
On the multifaceted history.
The multifaceted history.
Of cocaine.
Of cocaine.
As always, we encourage you.
We encourage you.
To continue exploring.
To continue exploring.
Questioning. And engaging in these important conversations.
Until
next time.
Yeah.
Happy diving.